The Detroit Lions have a very intriguing young pair of safeties on their roster who very recently signed from undrafted rookie free agency. Those safeties, of course, being Chelen Garnes from Wake Forest and Loren Strickland from Ball State, both of whom are players that are currently flying under the radar with the Detroit Lions, but players that could potentially have an impact on the team, whether it be through the practice squad or through a potential special teams role. And today, I wanted to take a look at the Detroit Lions young safety duo, the players that we're probably going to see quite a bit of in the 2024 preseason, and talk about whether or not it's possible for them to make the roster and be impactful. So let's start off with Loren Strickland, the 5'9", 199-pound safety from Ball State, who has a 7.81 RAS score, who graded out really well for a lot of categories, but unfortunately, due to his small size, did not have the highest of RAS scores. He graded out with great speed, elite explosion, just okay agility, but of course, being 5'9", very poor size for the safety position. Now, Loren Strickland played 2 years at Ball State University, where he totaled 50 tackles, 3 tackles for loss, 1 sack, 2 passes defended, and 2 forced fumbles. Now, he did take a year gap in between his sophomore and senior seasons, where he did not play as a freshman, so he really isn't the most experienced player and truly doesn't have the most reps when it comes to playing football at a high level. So if you're taking a look at this player and you're saying, okay, well, if he is a good athlete and he has okay statistics, but guy that even at Ball State was mostly a special teams player, what reason would the Detroit Lions have to, one, sign him out of undrafted rookie free agency and or give him a roster spot over players with NFL experience, high Division I experience, just guys that statistically would stand out a lot more than Loren Strickland? Well, Loren Strickland, to put it quite simply, is a hard-hitting safety, a guy that on special teams has an incredibly high motor, and he is a violent hitter. He is one of the biggest special teams hitters that I have seen in quite some time, and he uses every pound of his 199-pound frame. He puts everything behind every hit that he makes, and some of the special team tackles that he makes are just incredible to watch. He flies down the field, knifes through blockers, and just lays the boom on return men. And honestly, this video was going to be primarily about Chelen Garnes, but after watching some of the special teams plays that Loren Strickland was able to make, I couldn't not talk about the Ball State product as a potential player to make the special teams, especially a player that in a time where, Khalil Dorsey might not start on the active roster this season due to injury, where Emmanuel Mosley might not be on the roster to start the NFL season, right? Where injuries may arise, Loren Strickland could be one of those players that's brought up and put back on the practice squad, then brought up to the active roster and moved around on the roster from practice squad to the 53. But a player that will stick around for quite a while, a player that is going to be young, that is going to be cheap, that is going to continue to work hard, continue to be a great special teams piece, and a guy that will likely be the first to the ball every single time, and just another phenomenal piece to add to the special teams, especially if injuries arise. Like I said, if, a guy like Khalil Dorsey can't go, I think a guy like Loren Strickland could be a great depth piece and a great kind of replacement on the special teams for what Khalil Dorsey has brought to the defense and the special teams in the preseason. Now, the other player that we're going to take a look at today is Chelen Garnes. As well as Loren Strickland, Chelen Garnes measures in at 5'9", 199 pounds. He spent his first year of collegiate ball at the Navy Academy, but spent his last 4 at Wake Forest and measured in with a 6.95 RAS score throughout the combine process. Chelen Garnes, much like Loren Strickland, measured out with poor size, but good explosiveness, good agility, and great speed for the safety position. Now, Chelen Garnes played a lot more safety and a lot more defensive snaps than Loren Strickland did. He is a player that is much more of a coverage safety, much more of a true defensive back as opposed to a special teams gadget player. But I do think that Chelen Garnes could be a good special teams role as well. He's fast. He is pretty strong. He is very explosive. He is a guy that is always around the football, always has a nose for it, had 3 interceptions in his career, and played really well at the safety position. His freshman year at Navy, he had 11 tackles, 1 tackle for loss, half a sack, 2 interceptions, and a pass defended through the air. And then his final 4 seasons at Wake Forest, he totaled over 145 tackles, 7 tackles for loss, 4.5 sacks, an interception, 9 passes defended, and 2 fumble recoveries. He's a guy that is just consistently around the ball, consistently making good plays, consistently being in the right spot at the right time, and a guy that I think the Lions could potentially look at as a practice squad type of player, right? If injuries continue to arise, I think Chelen Garnes would be a good player to have in their back pocket, a player with some good instincts, a player that always seems to be in the right spot at the right time. And even though he's not going to grade out as an incredible athlete, even though he doesn't have the greatest statistics, he was a pretty good Power 5 safety and a guy that I think is going to have a great opportunity to not only make this roster in the preseason, but definitely make a case for himself on the practice squad to stick around as one of those 16. Now, taking a look at the depth chart of the Detroit Lions safeties right now, it is Ifeatu Melifonwu, Brian Branch, and Kirby Joseph as your guaranteed 3 to make the roster. I think Brandon Joseph is right up there with them with probably upwards of 90+% chance of making this roster as well. He's having a great training camp. He's been great in OTAs, great in mini camps, making a lot of plays through the air. And he was a guy that the Lions wanted to get on the active roster last year, but unfortunately just never found the roster spot. And then you have the 3 safeties that might not make the roster, that being CJ Moore, the special teams ace from a couple of years ago, Loren Strickland, who we just talked about, and Chelen Garnes, a player that, again, we talked about his versatility at safety and his ability to make plays through the air. And while the Detroit Lions carried 4 safeties a season ago, which would lead you to believe that all 3 of these guys would be cut, I do think that we could potentially see 2, if not all 3 of these players on the active roster at some point throughout the season. With Khalil Dorsey being questionable through OTAs and questionable to start at training camp, I think there is an opportunity for either Stephen Gilmore to make it as the 6th cornerback, or potentially with Emmanuel Mosley being out as well, them to go a little lighter at cornerback, knowing that Brian Branch can play the slot and actually adding an extra safety or 2, potentially leaving Moore and Strickland the opportunity to make the roster at least for the beginning of the NFL season. Now, with a battle between Strickland and Garnes and Moore for this roster, there are a lot of things to be considered, right? I think that special teams versatility is going to be the biggest factor as to which one of these 3 makes the roster. I don't think the Lions are necessarily looking for a 5th safety for the roster so much as they're looking for somebody that can play safety, but also really primarily be a special teams contributor, right? That is the players that they need at the 4th and 5th safety position. That is the kind of guys that they need in the lower ends of their depth chart. They need guys that can and are willing to fly down the field, make big hits on special teams, make those plays that other players and starters aren't going to be available to make. So I think that unfortunately does kind of eliminate Chelen Garnes. I just don't think he has the special teams experience that Strickland and Moore have, and I think that Strickland and Moore will be better special teams contributors early just because they have more experience doing so. Of course, Moore having 40 years of NFL experience doing so, and Strickland having a great opportunity at Ball State to be a special teams guy, a great coverage athlete, and a player that makes big plays constantly on the special team side of the ball. I think that's the reason that Strickland was signed. Now, between Moore and Strickland, there are, of course, a lot of different opportunities, right? Moore has a lot more experience, and Moore is potentially going to make this roster because he has been with the Lions special teams before. He's been a big-time contributor, been a special teams ace on the Detroit Lions, but Strickland is younger. I think Strickland hits a little bit harder. I think Strickland is a little bit quicker to the football. I think Strickland is, obviously doesn't have the off the field trouble that CJ Moore has had over the last year or so. He doesn't have the gambling suspension under his belts. So Strickland is going to be younger. He's going to be cheaper. He is very much the Detroit Lions type on the special teams. Whereas, CJ Moore is a veteran. He's experienced, and the Detroit Lions coaching staff and players know and love him a little bit more. So I think it will be an interesting battle to see if any of them can make the roster. But I do think that all of them will at least make the practice squad. And I think that Moore and Strickland in particular have the best shot to make the final 53. They have the special teams versatility. They have the ability to make plays on the special teams. And I think that's going to be a big factor as to which one makes the roster and which one moves to the practice squad as far as which one gets playing time. With all of that being said, I think both safeties have a pretty bright future in the NFL. They might not be the best players, they might not be the biggest names or the biggest stars, but I do think they will have healthy, long NFL careers, and I do think they will at least stick around to contribute to the Detroit Lions practice squad at the bare minimum. So with all of that being said, that is all for you guys today. Let me know down in the comments below what you think about these two, what you think that their roles could be on the team, and which one you think could potentially make the roster over the other. I'd be very curious what you guys have to say and what you guys think. With all of that being said, that's all I got for you guys right now. If you have yet to subscribe to the channel, please make sure to do so. We are 35 subscribers away from 4,000, and of course, we are trying to hit that goal before the start of training camp this season. So if you have yet to subscribe, please go down and do so. It takes 2 seconds and helps the channel out a ton. But with all of that being said, that's all I got for you guys right now. Thank you all so much for watching, and until next time, and as always, go Lions.